I've been in land development for over 20 years. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't mess with a man's property, especially when that property has been in his family for 3 generations. But the local HOA president, Margaret, didn't seem to understand that. She was a woman with too much power, too much ego, and absolutely no understanding of legal boundaries. One fine morning, I discovered the unimaginable. The HOA had sold my 2,500 acres of private woodland to a developer. They didn't own it. They had no rights to it. But they did it anyway. And when I confronted them, Margaret smirked and told me, "It's for the good of the community." 5 months later, she was signing away the deed to her $25 million mansion complex to me. And the best part? It was completely legal. My grandfather purchased the 2,500 acres back in the 1940s. The land was a mix of rolling hills, thick forest, and 2 pristine lakes. Over the decades, my family maintained it, logging responsibly, leasing parts for, hunting, and keeping the rest as untouched nature. When I inherited the land, it wasn't just a financial asset, it was home. Every trail, every tree, every fishing spot held a memory. And because the land bordered a luxury subdivision run by an HOA, I had always been polite but cautious with them. I never joined because my property was outside their jurisdiction. I first heard about the sale from a local farmer who asked if I was going to build a golf course. I laughed it off until he showed me a flyer from a development company. Coming soon, luxury homes on scenic Lakeview estates, over 1,500 acres of exclusive land. My stomach dropped. The photos taken on my property. When I called the developer, they said they had purchased the land from the HOA. I told them there must be a mistake, but they emailed me a scanned deed transfer signed by Margaret and the HOA board. I was stunned. The arrogance. They actually forged documents claiming the land belonged to them because it was unused, and for the community's benefit. My first instinct was to storm into the HOA office and demand answers, but instead, I called my lawyer. And that's when we decided we wouldn't just get the land back. We'd make them pay. We discovered a gold mine. The HOA had illegally claimed ownership of over a dozen parcels of land over the years. They had used HOA funds for personal retreats at 5-star resorts. Margaret herself was sitting on a massive, sprawling mansion complex paid for, in part, with HOA member fees. I could have taken them to court immediately, but lawsuits take time. I wanted them completely cornered. Over the next year, I let the sale proceed just far enough to trap them in fraud. We documented every email, recorded every meeting, and even had one board member secretly feeding us internal memos. When the time was right, we filed a lawsuit not only for return of the property, but also for damages, and we froze their accounts. Margaret panicked. Her personal accounts were tied to the HOA's financial activities, and she suddenly found herself facing both civil and criminal charges. Now, here's where it gets beautiful. The HOA's assets were seized, and Margaret's personal estate was listed as collateral for legal restitution. My lawyer advised that if we pushed for full compensation, part of that restitution could include property transfer, so through a court-approved sale. I ended up as the legal owner of Margaret's entire $25 million mansion complex, a cluster of luxury homes with a main villa, guest houses, stables, and even a private golf course. It wasn't revenge by force. It was revenge by law. I'll never forget the look on Margaret's face when she was handed the court papers. She went from smug superiority to open-mouthed shock as the judge explained. The plaintiff now owns the property in question, including all associated structures and assets. You are required to vacate within 30 days. She screamed, accused me of ruining her life, and even threatened to call in higher authorities. But the truth was undeniable. She had broken the law, and the law had returned the favor. Within 2 weeks, movers were hauling her designer furniture out of the main house. I didn't even have to lift a finger. She moved into a much smaller home in another county, far away from any HOA leadership. I sold off half the complex to a real estate investor for $14 million and kept the main villa for myself. I turned the land she had tried to steal into a protected nature reserve, ensuring no one could ever sell it again. Wasn't the money, wasn't the mansion. It wasn't even seeing her escorted out of her own home by a sheriff's deputy. It was knowing that the very arrogance she wielded against others was what destroyed her. She had built her empire on lies, intimidation, and exploitation. And in the end, the law and a patient, determined landowner took it all away. Moral of the story: don't underestimate someone just because you think you have the upper hand. Some of us don't just fight back, we make sure you never get the chance to hurt anyone else again. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.